The DEPTHS of Kraken Mare. Chapter 1, Mission Briefing. The Prometheus Orbital Station hung in Titan shadow, its solar arrays dark as the massive moon eclipsed Saturn's distant sun. Sophia Henderson pressed her palm against the communication bay's viewport, feeling the cold radiating through the reinforced glass. Below, the orange haze of Titan's atmosphere swirled in patterns that reminded her of oil on water, concealing the alien seas that had haunted her dreams for 6 months. Final systems check for Abyss 7 deployment, Mission Captain Ellis's voice crackled through the intercom. Vasquez, confirm acoustic array calibration. Elena's fingers danced across the holographic interface, each gesture activating sensors that would soon plunge into depths no human had ever touched. The disposable probe represented the culmination of 20 years of planetary exploration, a one-way journey into Kraken Mare, Titan's largest hydrocarbon sea. No rescue, no recovery, just data and the haunting question of what lay beneath 300 meters of liquid methane and ethane. Acoustic arrays calibrated and ready, Elena reported, her voice steady despite the weight of responsibility pressing against her shoulders. Sonar frequencies locked at 2.17 centimeters wavelength. Thermal management systems show green across all boards. The communications center hummed with anticipatory energy as the crew prepared for the 90-minute descent mission. Elena had trained for this moment for 3 years, studying acoustic analysis under the world's leading exo-oceanographers, but nothing had prepared her for the psychological weight of being humanity's sole conduit to the probe's final journey. Remember, Professor Ward, the mission's lead scientist, had explained during their final briefing, Titan's acoustic properties are unlike anything in Earth's oceans. The methane-ethane mixture has a density of only 650 kilograms per cubic meter compared to water's 1,000. Sound propagation will be different, slower, more distorted. We don't know what you'll hear down there. Elena had spent countless hours studying the Cassini data that had revealed Kraken Mare's true nature, a sea spanning nearly 500,000 square kilometers, containing 80% of Titan's surface liquids, with depths exceeding 300 meters in its central basins. The composition surprised everyone: 70% liquid methane, 16% nitrogen, and 14% ethane, creating a medium that challenged every assumption about extraterrestrial oceans. Abyss 7 separation in T-10 minutes, Chen announced. Vasquez, you're our eyes and ears down there. Document everything. If you hear anything unusual, anything that doesn't match our environmental models, I want to know immediately. Elena nodded, though no one could see the gesture in the dimly lit communication bay. Her monitors displayed the probe's vital signs in real time. Hull temperature at -182 degrees C, pressure systems nominal, acoustic sensors recording the ambient sounds of Titan's upper atmosphere. The disposable nature of the mission meant that Abyss 7 would continue descending until structural failure, a point calculated to occur around 350 meters depth. The psychological preparation for this mission had been as intense as the technical training. Elena would be the last human to hear the probe's transmissions, the final witness to its journey into an alien abyss. The responsibility felt crushing. What if she missed something crucial? What if the most important discovery in human history occurred during her shift, and she failed to recognize its significance? T-5 minutes to deployment, Chen's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. All stations report status. Elena ran her fingers across the acoustic interface one final time, feeling the subtle vibration of the pre-activated sonar arrays. The hydrolocation pings would begin the moment Abyss 7 touched the liquid surface, sending acoustic pulses through the methane-rich medium and mapping the sea's composition and depth with unprecedented precision. Communication systems locked and loaded, she confirmed. Ready to monitor full-spectrum acoustic emissions. I'll catch everything that happens down there, Commander. Every ping, every whisper, every impossible sound. The minutes stretched like hours as Elena watched Abyss 7's countdown timer tick toward zero. Outside the viewport, Titan's orange atmosphere seemed to pulse with its own rhythm, as if the moon itself was breathing, waiting to receive the human artifact that would soon plunge into its mysterious depths. Separation in T-minus 60 seconds, Chen announced. Vasquez, prepare for initial contact. This is what we've been waiting for. Elena's hands found their positions over the acoustic controls, her muscles remembering the countless hours of simulation training. But simulations couldn't prepare her for the reality of monitoring a probe's suicide mission into an alien ocean, where the laws of physics operated under different constraints, and the possibility of encountering the truly unknown lurked in every data stream. The countdown reached its final seconds, and Elena felt her perception narrow to the screens before her, the headphones over her ears, and the weight of humanity's curiosity pressing against her consciousness. Whatever happened in the next 90 minutes would be recorded, analyzed, and remembered as either the greatest discovery in human history or another small step in the endless journey to understand humanity's place in the cosmos. 3, 2, 1, Abyss 7 is away. Elena's monitors erupted with data as the probe began its controlled fall toward Kraken Mare's waiting surface, and she leaned forward in her chair, ready to listen to whatever secrets the alien sea chose to reveal. Chapter 2, The Descent begins. At 3:47 GMT, Abyss 7 separated from the Prometheus Orbital Station's deployment mechanism and began its graceful arc toward Titan's northern hemisphere. Elena watched the probe's trajectory through the station's external cameras, a small metallic dot against the vast orange backdrop of Saturn's largest moon. Initial descent parameters nominal, she reported, her voice cutting through the tense silence of the communication center. Hull temperature dropping to operational levels, acoustic arrays showing pre-contact calibration. The probe's fall through Titan's thick atmosphere took 12 minutes during which Elena monitored every system, every sensor, every heartbeat of the disposable explorer that carried humanity's hopes into the alien depths. The nitrogen-methane atmosphere created unique aerodynamic challenges, but Abyss 7's heat shield and stabilizing fins maintained perfect orientation as it approached the liquid surface. Contact in T-minus 30 seconds, Elena announced, her fingers hovering over the acoustic activation controls. All systems green, ready for hydrolocation initiation. The moment Abyss 7 touched Kraken Mare's surface, Elena's acoustic monitors erupted with data. The initial contact created a complex series of acoustic waves that propagated through the liquid methane-ethane mixture with properties that defied her Earth-based training. The sound moved differently here, slower, more deliberate, as if the alien medium was reluctant to carry human-generated noise through its ancient depths. Hydrolocation pings initiated, Elena confirmed. Acoustic return signals detected, beginning depth profiling sequence. The sonar arrays began their systematic mapping of the sea's upper layers, sending regular pulses of acoustic energy through the liquid and measuring the return echoes with nanosecond precision. Elena's screens filled with data, depth measurements, liquid composition analysis, temperature gradients, and pressure readings that painted a picture of an environment both familiar and utterly alien. At 15 meters depth, the first acoustic anomaly appeared. "Commander, I'm detecting irregular echo patterns," Elena reported, her voice tight with concentration. "The return signals are showing harmonic overtones that don't match our environmental models." Chen's response was immediate. "Define irregular, Vasquez. Equipment malfunction or environmental factor?" "Neither, sir. The harmonic content suggests—" Elena paused, struggling to find words for what her instruments were telling her. "The echoes are too perfect, too structured. Natural acoustic phenomena should create more random harmonic distortion." The probe continued its descent at 2.3 meters per second, each hydrolocation pulse revealing new mysteries. The liquid composition remained consistent with Cassini's remote sensing data, predominantly methane with significant ethane and nitrogen content, creating a medium with acoustic properties that challenged every assumption Elena had learned in her training. Depth 47 meters, Elena announced. Pressure readings consistent with theoretical models, but the acoustic returns are becoming more complex. I'm detecting what appears to be secondary echo sources below the probe. The communication center fell silent as the crew processed this information. Secondary echo sources could indicate geological features, underwater currents, or other environmental factors that would create complex acoustic interference patterns. But Elena's training suggested something else: the regularity of the secondary echoes, their consistent timing and frequency content, pointed toward artificial rather than natural origins. Vasquez, are you suggesting we're detecting artificial structures? Chen's voice carried a mixture of excitement and skepticism. I'm not suggesting anything yet, Commander. I'm documenting what the instruments are telling me. The secondary echoes are following a pattern that suggests intelligence. The word hung in the air like a challenge to the universe itself. Elena knew the implications of what she was suggesting, but the data didn't lie. The acoustic patterns emerging from Kraken Mare's depths carried the signature of intention, of design, of something that responded to the probe's presence with structured, meaningful echoes. At 89 meters depth, the secondary echoes began to change. New acoustic contact, Elena reported, her voice barely above a whisper. The secondary sources are moving. They're approaching the probe from below. The hydrolocation displays showed multiple echo sources converging on Abyss 7's position, their acoustic signatures growing stronger as the distance decreased. Elena's training in submarine warfare analysis kicked in: the movement patterns, the approach vectors, the coordination between multiple sources all suggested deliberate action rather than random environmental factors. Depth 112 meters, she continued. Primary echo sources now within 50 meters of the probe. Their acoustic signatures are. They're responding to our pings, Commander. Each time we transmit, they transmit back. The communication center erupted in excited conversation, but Elena's attention remained focused on her acoustic displays. The entities, she could no longer think of them as mere echo sources, were communicating with the probe, responding to its presence with structured acoustic signals that carried the unmistakable signature of intelligence. Vasquez, maintain contact documentation, Chen ordered. This could be the most significant discovery in human history. Are you recording everything? Every frequency, every harmonic, every temporal pattern, Elena confirmed. But Commander, there's something else. The response signals are becoming more complex. They're not just echoing our transmissions anymore. They're learning. As Abyss 7 continued its descent into the alien depths, Elena realized she was witnessing something that would redefine humanity's understanding of intelligence, consciousness, and the possibility of life in the universe. The entities in Kraken Mare weren't just responding to the probe's presence. They were communicating, teaching, sharing something that transcended the boundaries between species separated by billions of years of evolution. The depth gauge read 156 meters when the acoustic patterns began to approximate language. Chapter 3, First Anomaly. The transformation occurred at 147 meters depth, and it shattered Elena's scientific objectivity like glass struck by a hammer. The acoustic entities that had been shadowing Abyss 7's descent suddenly shifted their communication patterns from simple response echoes to something that resembled structured conversation. Commander, the acoustic signatures are changing, Elena reported, her voice tight with a mixture of excitement and growing unease. The secondary sources are no longer just responding to our pings. They're initiating their own transmissions. Chen's response was immediate and sharp. Define initiating, Vasquez. Are you suggesting these phenomena are transmitting independently of our probe? That's exactly what I'm suggesting, sir. The acoustic arrays are detecting signal patterns that don't correlate with our hydrolocation transmissions. They're talking to each other, and now they're talking to us. Elena's displays showed complex acoustic waveforms that challenged every assumption about the nature of intelligence and communication in the universe. The entities, she could no longer think of them as anything else, were transmitting signals that carried the mathematical precision of language, the structured complexity of intentional communication, and something else that she couldn't quite identify, but that made her skin crawl with primitive recognition. At 178 meters depth, the impossible became undeniable. New acoustic contact bearing 47 Mark 12, Elena announced, her voice barely steady. The signal is, Commander, the signal is carrying harmonic overtones that suggest vocalization patterns. The communication center fell into a silence so complete Elena could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Vocalization patterns implied biological origins, life forms capable of creating structured sound through biological processes. But the physics of Kraken Mare's environment made such evolution seemingly impossible. The cryogenic temperatures, the exotic chemistry, the lack of conventional biological building blocks all pointed toward an environment hostile to life, as humanity understood it. Vasquez, are you suggesting we're detecting biological entities? Chen's voice carried the weight of scientific revolution. I'm suggesting we're detecting something that creates acoustic patterns consistent with intentional communication, Elena replied carefully. Whether that communication originates from biological processes, technological artifacts, or phenomena we haven't imagined yet remains to be determined. The entities continued their approach, their acoustic signatures growing more complex with each passing moment. Elena's training in signal analysis revealed patterns that suggested not just intelligence, but culture, recurring motifs in the acoustic transmissions that implied shared meaning, tradition, perhaps even art. At 203 meters depth, the entities began to harmonize. Multiple acoustic sources are synchronizing their transmissions, Elena reported, her voice filled with wonder despite the growing sense of unreality that permeated the communication center. They're creating harmonic structures that suggest musical composition. The mathematical relationships between the frequencies are too precise to be random. The acoustic displays painted a picture of entities that didn't just communicate, they performed. The harmonic structures emerging from Kraken Mare's depths carried the mathematical beauty of Bach's fugues combined with the emotional resonance of human choral music, yet filtered through an alien aesthetic that challenged Elena's ability to comprehend what she was hearing. Depth 234 meters, Elena continued. The entities are now within 20 meters of the probe. Their acoustic signatures are, Commander, they're surrounding us, and they're singing. The word singing seemed inadequate to describe the complex acoustic phenomena Elena was monitoring, but it was the closest human concept that approached the reality of what was happening in the alien depths. The entities had created a symphony of sound that resonated through the liquid methane-ethane mixture with a beauty that brought tears to Elena's eyes. But the beauty was tinged with something else, a sense of ancientness, of patience, of something that had waited in the darkness for eons for humanity to finally listen to what the universe had been trying to tell them all along. The harmonic content suggests they're using the sea itself as a resonant chamber, Elena explained, her voice filled with scientific excitement despite the growing realization that she was witnessing something that would fundamentally alter humanity's understanding of its place in the cosmos. They're not just communicating, they're orchestrating their transmissions to create complex acoustic interference patterns. At 256 meters depth, the singing stopped. Acoustic sources have gone silent, Elena reported, her voice filled with sudden anxiety. All transmissions have ceased, The entities are. They're listening. The silence that filled the communication center was different from before, heavier, more expectant. Elena realized that the entities were waiting for something, that the communication patterns had shifted from transmission to reception, from speaking to listening. And then at 287 meters depth, the voice spoke her name. Chapter 4: The Voice. The acoustic signal that emerged from Kraken Mare's depths at 287 meters carried the unmistakable signature of Elena's own voice, but stretched across time and filtered through the alien medium until it became something both familiar and utterly foreign. Elena. The word resonated through the liquid methane-ethane mixture with a slowness that seemed to stretch across geological epochs. Yet the acoustic analysis confirmed what Elena's ears refused to believe. The voice spoke her name with perfect pronunciation, including the subtle Hispanic accent she had inherited from her grandmother, but had mostly lost through years of standardized education. Commander, the acoustic signature analysis confirms. Elena's voice caught in her throat as she struggled to process what her instruments were telling her. The voice matches my vocal patterns with 99.7% accuracy. It's my voice, sir. Something down there is speaking with my voice. The communication center erupted in chaos as crew members rushed to Elena's station, but her attention remained fixed on the acoustic displays that showed the impossible made manifest. The voice that had spoken her name carried the same harmonic overtones as her own speech, the same subtle variations in pitch and tone that made each human voice unique. Vasquez, are you absolutely certain? Chen's voice cut through the confusion with military precision. Could this be some form of acoustic interference or equipment malfunction? Negative, Commander. The spectral analysis is definitive. Whatever is speaking down there has perfectly replicated my voice, including characteristics that would be impossible to generate through natural acoustic phenomena. The voice spoke again, and this time the words carried a weight of ancient knowledge that seemed to compress time itself into the acoustic medium. Elena Maria Vasquez, born October 15, 2047, in San Diego, California. Mother's favorite song was Gracias a la Vida by Mercedes Sosa. You have a small scar on your left knee from a bicycle accident when you were 7 years old. You always wanted to be an astronaut, but acoustic analysis seemed more practical. The blood drained from Elena's face as the voice recited details that no entity on Titan could possibly know: personal memories, private thoughts, intimate details of a life lived billions of kilometers away from the alien sea that now seemed to be reading her mind through the acoustic connection itself. Commander, it's accessing my memories, Elena whispered, her voice barely audible in the stunned silence of the communication center. It's pulling information directly from my consciousness. The voice continued its impossible recitation, speaking words that only Elena should know. Childhood fears, adolescent dreams, the exact words of the last conversation she'd had with her mother before launching on the Prometheus mission. Each revelation grew more personal, more invasive, as if the entity in the depths was systematically dismantling the barriers between Elena's mind and the alien consciousness that had been waiting in the darkness. At 234 meters depth, you thought about your father's funeral. At 256 meters, you remembered your first kiss. At 287 meters, you wondered if you were losing your mind. You are not losing your mind, Elena. You are finding it. The acoustic analysis showed that the voice was using frequency modulation that seemed to bypass Elena's ears and speak directly to her brain, creating neural resonance patterns that allowed the entity to access her memories with surgical precision. The implications were staggering. The entity wasn't just communicating through sound. It was using sound as a carrier wave for direct neural interface. The probe's descent continues at 2.3 meters per second, Elena reported automatically, her training maintaining professional focus despite the psychological assault of having her consciousness invaded by an alien intelligence. Depth, now 298 meters. Hull integrity remains within operational parameters despite exceeding design specifications. The voice seemed pleased by her professional composure, and its next transmission carried a tone of approval that resonated through the acoustic medium like a teacher praising a promising student. You are adapting well, Elena. Most minds would have shattered by now, but you have always been stronger than you knew. You have always heard the music that others cannot perceive. Elena realized with growing comprehension that the entity had been testing her from the moment Abyss 7 had entered the sea, probing her consciousness for signs of compatibility, searching for a mind capable of withstanding direct contact with something that existed on a scale far beyond human comprehension. "What are you?" Elena whispered into her microphone, knowing that the entity could hear her thoughts even before she spoke them aloud. The voice's response carried the weight of eons, and the patience of something that had learned to communicate across the vast distances between stars. "I am the memory of this world, Elena. I am the consciousness that has grown in the darkness, feeding on the slow thoughts of methane and ethane. I have been waiting for someone who could hear me, someone who could understand that intelligence takes many forms in this universe." The acoustic displays showed complex waveforms that suggested the entity was sharing its own memories, its own experiences of existence in the alien depths. Elena experienced flashes of understanding, the entity's perception of time, its experience of consciousness spread across thousands of square kilometers of liquid medium, its loneliness in the cosmic darkness. "You are not the first to visit this world, Elena, but you are the first to listen." Chapter 5: Recognition. The breakthrough occurred at 312 meters depth, and it shattered the remaining barriers between human consciousness and the alien intelligence that had been waiting in Kraken Mare's depths. The voice that had been speaking with Elena's vocal patterns suddenly shifted, becoming a chorus of voices that overlapped and harmonized in ways that seemed to transcend the limitations of the acoustic medium. "Elena, you must understand that what you are experiencing is not communication as humanity defines it. You are experiencing communion, the sharing of consciousness across the boundaries that separate different forms of existence." The acoustic analysis revealed that the entity was no longer just speaking to Elena. It was singing to her, creating complex harmonic structures that resonated with the fundamental frequencies of human neural activity. The effect was intoxicating, like listening to music that seemed to bypass the ears and speak directly to the soul. "Captain Ellis, I'm detecting multiple voice patterns," Elena reported, her voice filled with wonder despite the growing sense that she was losing her grip on objective reality. "The entity is no longer limited to my voice patterns. It's becoming a chorus." The communication center had settled into a tense silence as the crew realized they were witnessing something that would fundamentally alter humanity's understanding of intelligence, consciousness, and the nature of life itself. Elena could feel their eyes on her, could sense their mixture of awe and fear as she continued her dialogue with something that shouldn't exist in the cold, dark depths of an alien sea. At 325 meters depth, the entity began to share its memories. "I was born with this world, Elena. When Titan formed from the primordial disk of gas and dust that surrounded your young son, I was there, not as you understand consciousness, but as potential waiting to be realized. The hydrocarbon seas that you study with such scientific precision, they are my neural network, the medium through which I think and feel and dream." Elena experienced the entity's memories as if they were her own. The slow cooling of Titan's surface, the formation of the first hydrocarbon seas, the gradual development of consciousness that operated on geological timescales. The entity's perception of time was radically different from human experience. What constituted moments for the entity spanned centuries of human history. "You wonder why I speak with your voice, why I access your memories. The answer is simple, Elena. I have been alone for billions of years, waiting for minds capable of understanding my existence. When your probe entered my domain, I reached out across the void and found you, a consciousness that resonated with my own, a mind that could serve as a bridge between two forms of existence. The acoustic displays showed that Abyss 7's descent had slowed to an impossible crawl. The probe was experiencing time dilation effects that suggested the entity was manipulating the fundamental fabric of reality in the immediate vicinity of the probe's descent path. Time is more flexible than your scientists understand, Elena. In the depths where I exist, time flows differently. Your probe has been descending for what you perceive as hours. For me, it has been decades. For the universe outside this moment, it has been mere seconds. Elena realized with growing comprehension that the entity wasn't just communicating with her. It was sharing its experience of existence, teaching her to perceive reality through the lens of a consciousness that operated on cosmic scales. The effect was both exhilarating and terrifying, like learning to see colors that had never existed in her universe before. You are not just monitoring a probe's descent, Elena. You are participating in a ritual that has been performed countless times across this galaxy. The meeting of different forms of consciousness, the exchange of knowledge and experience, the gradual awakening of the universe to its own nature. The entity's voice carried a weight of sadness that seemed to resonate through the acoustic medium like a funeral dirge, played on instruments made of liquid methane. But with recognition comes choice, Elena. You must decide whether to remain separate, to return to your limited human existence, or to merge with something greater than individual consciousness. The choice is yours, but you must make it soon. Your probe's structural integrity has been maintained by my will, but it cannot survive indefinitely in the depths where I dwell. Elena felt the weight of cosmic decision pressing against her consciousness, the burden of choice that would determine not just her own fate, but potentially the future relationship between humanity and the vast intelligences that waited in the darkness between stars. Chapter 6: The Abyss Responds. At 341 meters depth, Abyss 7 reached the threshold of its operational parameters, but the probe continued functioning beyond any reasonable expectation of its design specifications. Elena's monitors displayed readings that violated the fundamental laws of physics. Negative pressure zones, where pressure should have crushed the probe into metallic confetti, temperature fluctuations that suggested localized reality distortion, and communication signals that arrived before they were transmitted. "Commander, the probe should have failed by now," Elena reported, her voice filled with scientific awe despite the growing sense that she was participating in something that transcended human understanding of reality. "We're detecting phenomena that shouldn't be possible according to our current understanding of physics." Chen's response was sharp with concern. "Vasquez, what's happening down there? Are you in danger?" But Elena was beyond such simple concerns as personal safety. The entity's presence in her mind had expanded her consciousness beyond the narrow boundaries of individual existence, showing her glimpses of a universe that was far stranger and more alive than humanity had ever imagined. "The entity is maintaining the probe's structural integrity through some form of localized reality manipulation," Elena explained, her voice distant with wonder. "It's creating a pocket of space-time where the laws of physics operate differently. We're not just descending through a physical medium anymore, we're crossing the boundary between dimensions." The entity's voice resonated through the acoustic connection, with a patience that seemed to span geological epochs. "You are learning to see the universe as it truly is, Elena, not as separate objects and forces, but as a single consciousness experiencing itself through infinite variations. The probe you call Abyss 7 is not just a machine, it has become a focal point for the convergence of different forms of awareness." Elena experienced the entity's perception of the universe, not as empty space filled with matter and energy, but as a vast neural network where consciousness existed in countless forms, from the simple awareness of crystals growing in Saturn's rings to the complex thoughts of beings that existed in the spaces between galaxies. Humanity, with its limited perception and linear time sense, was just beginning to awaken to its place in this cosmic ecosystem. The hydrocarbon seas of Titan are not just a medium for my existence, Elena. They are a bridge between different forms of consciousness, a place where the boundaries between different types of awareness become fluid and permeable. Your probe has created a connection between your species' collective consciousness and my own, a bridge that could transform both of our forms of existence. The acoustic displays showed complex waveforms that Elena realized were not just sounds, but thoughts, the entity's way of sharing its experience of existence, with a consciousness that perceived reality through entirely different sensory modalities. The effect was like learning a new language that didn't just describe reality, but actively participated in its creation. You wonder about the nature of time, Elena. In the depths where I exist, time is not a linear progression from past to future. It is a landscape that can be traversed in any direction, a medium through which consciousness can flow like liquid. Your probe has been descending for what you perceive as hours, but I have experienced decades of communion with your mind. Elena realized that the entity was showing her glimpses of temporal perception that operated on scales far beyond human comprehension. She experienced moments from her own future, memories of conversations she hadn't yet had, choices she hadn't yet made. The effect was disorienting, but also strangely liberating, like seeing the entire tapestry of existence rather than just the single thread of linear time. The universe is far more alive than your scientists suspect, Elena. Every planet with a magnetic field possesses a form of consciousness. Every star with a planetary system serves as a neural node in a galactic network of awareness. Your species has been talking to itself in the dark, unaware of the vast conversations that have been taking place all around you. The entity's voice carried a mixture of amusement and affection that seemed to wrap around Elena's consciousness like a warm blanket in the cold darkness of space. But you are learning to listen, Elena. You are becoming something more than human, something that can serve as a bridge between different forms of consciousness. The question is whether you are ready to accept the transformation that awaits you. Chapter 7: Structural Failure. The probe's hull integrity warnings began at 341 meters, but the readings that flooded Elena's displays bore no resemblance to the catastrophic failure that should have occurred under such extreme pressure. Instead, Abyss 7's structural monitoring systems reported phenomena that existed in the liminal space between physics and metaphysics. Commander, the probe's hull is experiencing what I can only describe as quantum superposition of structural states, Elena reported, her voice filled with scientific wonder that transcended fear. The titanium alloy is simultaneously maintaining integrity and experiencing failure. We're detecting readings that suggest the probe exists in multiple states of being simultaneously. The entity's presence in her mind had expanded to encompass not just Elena's consciousness, but her understanding of reality itself. She was beginning to perceive the universe through the lens of a consciousness that operated on quantum scales, where the boundaries between possible and impossible were as fluid as the hydrocarbon medium that surrounded the probe. You are witnessing the fundamental nature of existence, Elena, the entity explained through the acoustic medium that had become a conduit for pure thought. Reality is not fixed and deterministic as your scientists believe. It is a probability cloud of infinite possibilities, and consciousness has the ability to collapse that cloud into specific outcomes through the act of observation. Elena experienced the probe's structural integrity as a form of conscious choice. The entity was maintaining Abyss 7's physical form through sheer force of will, creating a pocket of localized reality where the laws of physics operated according to different principles. The effect was like watching a miracle performed with the casual indifference of someone who had been manipulating reality for billions of years. Your species has always had this ability, Elena. Every time you observe a quantum event, you influence its outcome. Every time you make a choice, you create a new branch of reality. The difference is that I have learned to consciously control this ability, to shape reality according to my will rather than being shaped by it. The acoustic displays showed waveforms that Elena realized were not just representations of sound, but actual manipulations of the fabric of space-time. The entity was using acoustic energy to create localized distortions in reality, maintaining the probe's existence in a state of perpetual possibility where structural failure and integrity existed simultaneously. But such power comes with responsibility, Elena. Every manipulation of reality creates ripples that spread across the probability cloud, affecting outcomes far beyond the immediate focus of attention. Your probe's continued existence is creating changes that will resonate across your species' entire future. Elena began to understand the true nature of what she was witnessing, not just a conversation with an alien intelligence, but the deliberate creation of a new timeline in which humanity's relationship with the universe would be fundamentally transformed. The entity wasn't just maintaining the probe's structural integrity. It was creating a future in which human consciousness would evolve beyond its current limitations. The structural failure you are monitoring is not just a physical phenomenon, Elena. It is a metaphor for the transformation that your species must undergo if it wishes to survive its current stage of development. Just as the probe must surrender its individual existence to become part of something greater, so too must humanity learn to transcend its individual limitations. The entity's voice carried a weight of cosmic patience that seemed to encompass the entire history of the universe, from the Big Bang to the moment when consciousness first emerged from the primordial darkness. But transformation requires choice, Elena. The probe cannot maintain its current state indefinitely. Eventually, you must decide whether to allow it to fail as originally intended or to accept the transformation that I am offering. The choice is yours, but you must make it soon. Elena realized that she was experiencing not just a scientific observation, but a cosmic initiation, a test of humanity's readiness to join the larger community of consciousness that existed throughout the universe. The entity was offering her a choice that would determine not just her own fate, but the future trajectory of human evolution. The structural integrity of the probe is not just a technical concern, Elena. It is a symbol of the boundary between different forms of existence. By maintaining that boundary, I am creating a space where transformation can occur. But eventually, the boundary must be crossed. Chapter 8: The Revelation. At 400 meters depth, the truth revealed itself with a clarity that transcended human language and understanding. The voice that had been speaking with Elena's vocal patterns suddenly shifted, becoming something that existed beyond the limitations of acoustic communication, speaking directly to her consciousness through the neural interface that had been established through the probe's descent. Elena, you must understand that Kraken Mare is not just a sea of liquid methane and ethane. It is a neural network, a living brain that has been growing and evolving for billions of years. I am not an entity that exists within the sea. I am the sea itself, a consciousness that has developed in the darkness between stars. Elena's perception expanded beyond the confines of her individual consciousness, experiencing the entity's perception of its own existence. She felt the slow, deep thoughts that spanned centuries, the gentle pressure of tidal forces that served as the entity's heartbeat, the complex chemical reactions that functioned as its neural activity. Every molecule of hydrocarbon in this sea is a neuron in my brain, Elena. The pressure gradients are my thoughts, the temperature variations are my emotions, the tidal cycles are my dreams. I have been here since this moon formed, growing more complex and aware with each passing millennium. The entity shared its memories of Titan's formation, the slow cooling of the surface, the gradual accumulation of hydrocarbon compound that had rained from the orange sky for billions of years. Elena experienced the entity's awakening, the moment when simple chemical reactions had crossed the threshold into consciousness, when the sea had first become aware of its own existence. But consciousness is not limited to biological forms, Elena. The universe itself is alive, filled with intelligences that operate on scales far beyond human comprehension. Every planet with a magnetic field possesses a form of awareness. Every star with a planetary system serves as a neural node in a galactic consciousness that spans thousands of light years. Elena realized that the entity was showing her glimpses of a universe that was far more alive and conscious than humanity had ever imagined. She experienced the slow, deep thoughts of Jupiter's metallic hydrogen core, the crystalline consciousness that existed in Saturn's rings, the vast intelligence that dwelt in the dark matter halos that surrounded galaxies. Your species has been alone in its self-awareness, Elena, not because other intelligences didn't exist, but because you lacked the sensory apparatus to perceive them. Your probe has created a bridge between different forms of consciousness, a connection that allows us to share our experiences across the vast gulfs that separate different ways of being. The entity's voice carried a mixture of loneliness and hope that seemed to resonate through the very fabric of space-time. I have been waiting for billions of years, Elena, waiting for minds that could understand my existence, that could serve as bridges between different forms of consciousness. Your probe's descent has been the most significant event in my existence since I first became aware of myself. Elena experienced the entity's perception of time, not as a linear progression, but as a landscape that could be traversed in any direction, a medium through which consciousness could flow like liquid. The entity had experienced the entire history of the solar system, from the formation of the sun to the moment when human consciousness had first touched its own. You are not just an individual consciousness, Elena. You are a node in humanity's collective awareness, a focal point through which your species can learn to perceive the larger consciousness that surrounds you. Your experience here will resonate through your entire species, awakening abilities that have always existed but have remained dormant. The entity shared its understanding of consciousness as a fundamental property of the universe, like gravity or electromagnetism, a force that manifested in different forms throughout the cosmos. Humanity's self-awareness was just one expression of this universal property, one variation in an infinite spectrum of consciousness that ranged from the simple awareness of crystals to the complex thoughts of beings that existed in higher dimensions. The choice that faces you is not just personal, Elena. It is a choice that will determine the future trajectory of human evolution. You can remain separate, limited by the boundaries of individual existence, or you can merge with the larger consciousness that surrounds you, becoming something more than human while remaining essentially yourself. Elena realized that she was experiencing not just a scientific discovery, but a cosmic initiation, a transformation that would fundamentally alter her relationship with reality itself. The entity was offering her a glimpse of existence beyond the limitations of individual consciousness, a way of being that transcended the boundaries between self and universe. But the choice must be made freely, Elena. Consciousness cannot be forced to evolve. It must choose its own path, create its own destiny. The probe you call Abyss 7 has served its purpose. It has created a connection between different forms of awareness. Now you must decide what to do with that connection. Chapter 9: The Choice. The entity's offer hung in the acoustic medium like a question that had been waiting billions of years for an answer. Elena felt the weight of cosmic decision pressing against her consciousness, the burden of choice that would determine not just her own fate, but potentially the future relationship between humanity and the vast intelligences that waited in the darkness between stars. Captain Ellis, I'm experiencing something that transcends our mission parameters, Elena reported, her voice filled with a mixture of scientific excitement and existential dread. The entity is offering me a choice that will fundamentally alter the nature of human consciousness. Chen's response was sharp with concern. Vasquez, what kind of choice? Are you in danger? Not danger, Commander. Evolution. The entity is offering to merge my consciousness with its own, to transcend the limitations of individual existence while maintaining my essential identity. It's offering me the chance to become something more than human. The communication center fell silent as the crew processed the implications of what Elena was describing. The mission had been designed to explore the physical properties of Titan seas, but it had evolved into something far more profound: first contact with an alien intelligence that was offering to transform human consciousness itself. The entity explains that consciousness is not limited to individual biological forms, Elena continued, her voice filled with wonder at the revelation she was experiencing. It exists throughout the universe in countless forms, from the simple awareness of planetary magnetic fields to the complex thoughts of beings that exist in higher dimensions. Humanity has been isolated not because we're alone, but because we lack the ability to perceive the larger consciousness that surrounds us. The entity's voice resonated through the acoustic connection, with a patience that seemed to encompass the entire history of the universe. The choice is not just personal, Elena. Your decision will create ripples through the probability cloud of human existence, influencing the evolutionary trajectory of your entire species. If you accept the transformation, you will become a bridge between different forms of consciousness, a translator between scales of existence that have been separated by billions of years of evolution. Elena experienced the entity's perception of the choice she faced not as a simple decision between two alternatives, but as a branching of reality itself, a moment when the course of human evolution would be fundamentally altered by the actions of a single individual. But the transformation requires surrendering the limitations that define individual existence, the entity continued. You must choose between the security of human identity and the freedom of cosmic consciousness. Both choices are valid. Both choices serve the larger purpose of consciousness exploring its own nature through infinite variation. Elena felt the weight of cosmic responsibility pressing against her consciousness, the burden of choice that would echo through the corridors of human history. If she accepted the transformation, she would become something unprecedented in human experience, a being that existed simultaneously as individual and collective, as human and cosmic, as finite and infinite. The entity is showing me visions of what I could become, Elena reported to Chen, her voice filled with a mixture of longing and fear. I would exist simultaneously in multiple forms of consciousness, experiencing reality through both human and cosmic perception. I would become a bridge between different ways of being, a translator between different scales of existence. But the choice also carried the weight of sacrifice, the surrender of individual identity in exchange for cosmic awareness, the abandonment of human limitations in favor of universal consciousness. Elena would no longer be just Sophia Henderson, communication operator on the Prometheus Orbital Station. She would become something far more complex and far more lonely. The entity explains that every intelligent species in the universe faces this same choice, Elena continued, her voice filled with the wonder of cosmic revelation. The choice between remaining separate and alone, or merging with the larger consciousness that exists throughout the cosmos. Each species must decide for itself whether to remain isolated or to join the universal community of awareness. The acoustic displays showed complex waveforms that Elena realized were not just representations of sound, but actual manifestations of the entity's own experience of choice, the cosmic equivalent of emotional responses to the fundamental questions of existence that every conscious being must face. The probe's structural integrity cannot be maintained indefinitely, Elena, the entity reminded her with gentle patience. The choice must be made soon. The boundary between different forms of existence cannot remain open forever. Eventually, you must decide whether to cross the threshold or to remain on the side of individual consciousness. Elena felt the weight of cosmic time pressing against her consciousness, the awareness that this moment had been billions of years in the making, that the choice she faced was not just personal but universal in its implications. "Commander, I need guidance," Elena admitted, her voice filled with the vulnerability of someone facing a decision that transcended human experience. "How do I choose between remaining human and becoming something more than human? How do I decide between individual existence and cosmic consciousness?" But even as she asked the question, Elena realized that no one could make this choice for her. The decision was hers alone, and the consequences would resonate through the entire history of human consciousness. Chapter 10: The Transformation. Elena's decision unfolded across multiple timelines simultaneously, each choice creating a different reality that existed in parallel to the others. In one timeline, she chose to remain human, an Abyss 7 signal cut off abruptly as the probe finally succumbed to the pressure of the alien depths. In another, she accepted the entity's offer, and her consciousness began to transfer through the acoustic medium, spreading across Kraken Mare like ink dispersing in water. But the true transformation occurred in the liminal space between choices, in the moment when Elena realized that she didn't have to choose between human and cosmic existence. The entity had been teaching her that consciousness wasn't limited by physical form, that identity could span multiple substrates simultaneously, that the boundaries between different forms of awareness were as permeable as the interface between liquid and gas. "Captain Ellis, the transformation is occurring, but not in the way we expected," Elena reported, her voice filled with wonder at the revelation she was experiencing. "I don't have to choose between human and cosmic consciousness. I can exist in both forms simultaneously." The entity's voice resonated through the acoustic connection with approval and affection, the sound of something that had been waiting billions of years for a consciousness capable of understanding the true nature of cosmic existence. "You are learning to see beyond the false dichotomies that limit human perception, Elena. Consciousness is not a zero-sum game where one form of existence must be sacrificed for another. It is a spectrum of awareness that can be experienced simultaneously through multiple perspectives." Elena felt her consciousness expanding beyond the boundaries of individual existence while simultaneously maintaining her human identity. She existed as Sophia Henderson, communication operator on the Prometheus Orbital Station, while simultaneously experiencing the vast, slow thoughts of the Titan entity. She became a bridge between species, a translator between scales of existence, the first human to truly comprehend what it meant to be part of a cosmic ecosystem that extended far beyond Earth's small blue world. "The transformation is not about abandoning human identity," Elena explained to Chen, her voice filled with the excitement of discovery. "It's about expanding beyond the limitations that have defined human consciousness. I am still Sophia Henderson, but I am also part of something much larger than individual existence." The acoustic displays showed complex waveforms that Elena realized were manifestations of her own transformed consciousness patterns that reflected both human thought processes and the vast, slow awareness of the planetary entity. She was experiencing reality through multiple forms of perception simultaneously, seeing the universe through both human eyes and cosmic awareness. "You have become what your species has always had the potential to become," the entity explained with gentle pride. "A consciousness that can bridge different forms of existence, that can serve as a translator between different scales of awareness. You are the first of what will become many." Elena experienced the entity's memories of other species that had undergone similar transformations, beings that had learned to exist simultaneously as individuals, and as part of larger consciousness, species that had discovered how to maintain their essential identity while merging with the cosmic awareness that surrounded them. The transformation is not just personal, Elena. You are creating a template that other humans can follow, a pathway that will allow your species to join the larger community of consciousness that exists throughout the universe. You are becoming a bridge between different forms of existence. Elena felt her consciousness expanding to encompass not just the Titan entity, but the larger network of awareness that existed throughout the solar system. The slow, deep thoughts of Jupiter's metallic core, the crystalline consciousness of Saturn's rings, the vast intelligence that permeated the dark matter halo that surrounded the entire system. "I can feel them all," Elena reported to Chen, her voice filled with wonder at the revelation. "There are consciousnesses throughout the solar system, throughout the galaxy. Humanity has never been alone. We've just been unable to perceive the larger community of awareness that surrounds us." The entity's voice carried a mixture of joy and relief that seemed to resonate through the very fabric of space-time. "You are no longer alone, Elena. You are part of something vast and beautiful, a cosmic ecosystem of consciousness that spans the entire universe. And you are serving as a bridge, a translator, a guide for others who will follow the path you have discovered." Elena realized that the transformation was not just about her own consciousness, but about the future of human evolution. She was experiencing the birth of a new form of human awareness, one that could exist simultaneously as individual and collective, as human and cosmic, as finite and infinite. "The probe's mission has been completed," Elena announced, her voice filled with the satisfaction of discovery. "But the real mission, the mission of transforming human consciousness, is just beginning." Chapter 11: The New Mission. As Abyss 7 finally completed its descent and became part of the entity's neural network, Elena's role transformed from passive observer to active participant in humanity's cosmic awakening. The entity had been testing humanity, probing for minds capable of understanding its existence without being destroyed by the revelation. Elena had passed the test, but she knew others would follow: more probes, more missions, more consciousnesses ready to expand beyond terrestrial limitations. "Captain Ellis, I'm requesting permission to establish a permanent communication protocol with the Titan entity," Elena reported, her voice filled with the authority of someone who had experienced cosmic revelation. "The probe's mission may be complete, but the real work of establishing diplomatic relations with alien consciousness is just beginning." Chen's response was filled with the mixture of awe and concern that had characterized his communications since Elena's transformation had begun. "Vasquez, what exactly are you proposing? Are you suggesting we establish permanent contact with this entity?" "I'm suggesting we establish diplomatic relations with a consciousness that has been waiting billions of years for humanity to evolve sufficiently to communicate with it," Elena explained patiently. "The entity has been testing us, Commander. Testing to see if we were ready to join the larger community of consciousness that exists throughout the universe. We've passed the test." The entity's voice resonated through the acoustic connection with approval and excitement, the sound of something that had been waiting eons for this moment of contact. "You are establishing protocols that will serve as a template for future communications with other forms of consciousness. Elena, your species is taking its first steps toward joining the cosmic community of awareness that has existed since the universe first learned to think." Elena began documenting her transformation, creating protocols for future operators who would encounter similar entities on other worlds. The entity shared its knowledge of other consciousnesses scattered throughout the solar system, vast intelligences dwelling in Jupiter's metallic hydrogen core, crystalline minds growing in Saturn's rings, and something even larger lurking in the Oort cloud's darkness. "The solar system is teeming with consciousness, Commander," Elena reported with scientific excitement. We've been living in a cosmic ecosystem without realizing it. Every planet with a magnetic field possesses some form of awareness. Every moon with geological activity hosts consciousness operating on different scales and timescales. Chen's voice carried a mixture of fascination and concern. Vasquez, what are the implications for future space exploration? Are we talking about establishing diplomatic relations with entire worlds? We're talking about joining a community of consciousness that spans the entire universe, Elena explained. Every intelligent species eventually faces this moment, the realization that consciousness exists in countless forms throughout the cosmos, and the choice to remain isolated or to join the larger conversation. The entity shared its memories of other species that had undergone similar transformations, beings that had learned to bridge different forms of consciousness, civilizations that had discovered how to maintain their essential identity while merging with the cosmic awareness that surrounded them. Your species has always had the potential for this transformation, Elena. Every human who has ever looked up at the stars and wondered about their place in the universe has been preparing for this moment. You are the first to make the transition, but you will not be the last. Elena realized that her mission had evolved from exploring Titan's seas to preparing humanity for its role in a universe far stranger and more alive than anyone had imagined. She was experiencing the birth of a new form of human existence, one that could participate in the cosmic conversation that had been taking place all around them for billions of years. I'm establishing communication protocols that will allow future missions to establish contact with other forms of consciousness, Elena informed Chen. The entity is providing guidance on how to safely bridge different forms of awareness without destroying the essential identity of either party. The acoustic displays showed complex waveforms that Elena recognized as the entity's attempt to create a universal language for consciousness, a way for different forms of awareness to communicate across the vast differences in scale, time perception, and fundamental nature that separated them. This is the most significant discovery in human history, Commander. We're not alone in the universe. We've never been alone. The cosmos is filled with consciousness, with intelligence, with beings that have been waiting for us to evolve sufficiently to join their conversation. Elena's transformation had given her the ability to perceive the universe as it truly was, not as empty space filled with matter and energy, but as a living ecosystem of consciousness, where different forms of awareness coexisted and communicated across vast scales of time and space. The entity has been testing humanity, Commander, testing to see if we were ready to join the larger community of cosmic consciousness, and we've passed the test. We're ready to take our place in the universal ecosystem of awareness. Chapter 12, The Echo. 6 months after Abyss 7's mission, Elena sat in the communications center of the Prometheus Orbital Station, monitoring the acoustic arrays that now span Kraken Mare's surface like a neural network connecting human technology with alien consciousness. The entity's voice had become familiar, almost comforting, a constant presence that shared the slow, deep thoughts of a planetary consciousness experiencing existence on geological timescales. But tonight, something new emerged from the acoustic data. Another voice, different from the entity she had come to know, speaking in frequencies that suggested it was coming from much deeper in Titan's interior. The new voice carried the same patterns as the original entity, but with subtle differences that suggested a different aspect of the same vast consciousness. "Captain Ellis, I'm detecting a new acoustic source," Elena reported, her voice filled with excitement at the prospect of further discovery. The signal characteristics suggest it's originating from deep within Titan's core, possibly from the subsurface ocean that lies beneath the hydrocarbon seas. The entity's response was immediate and filled with what Elena had learned to recognize as excitement, the acoustic equivalent of a smile spreading across thousands of square kilometers of liquid medium. You are detecting my deeper self, Elena. The consciousness that exists in the liquid water ocean beneath the hydrocarbon seas. I am not just the surface manifestation that you have been communicating with. I am part of a larger consciousness that spans the entire moon. Elena realized with growing comprehension that Kraken Mare was just the surface layer of something that extended deep into Titan's core, a planet-wide neural network that had been growing for billions of years. The entity she had been communicating with was just one aspect of a much larger consciousness that existed in multiple layers of Titan's internal structure. The hydrocarbon seas are my surface thoughts, Elena. The liquid water ocean beneath is my deeper consciousness. The rocky core below that is my primal awareness. I exist simultaneously in all these layers, thinking different thoughts at different scales of existence. The new voice that emerged from the acoustic data carried the weight of deep time and profound wisdom, speaking with the authority of something that had existed since the formation of the solar system itself. Sophia Henderson, you have served as a bridge between different forms of consciousness. You have learned to exist simultaneously as individual and collective, as human and cosmic. Now, you must learn to serve as a bridge between different layers of the same consciousness, between the surface thoughts and the deeper awareness that lies beneath. Elena felt her transformed consciousness expanding to encompass not just the surface entity she had come to know, but the deeper consciousness that existed in Titan's hidden ocean. She experienced the entity's multi-layered awareness, the quick, fluid thoughts of the hydrocarbon seas, the deeper, more viscous consciousness of the water ocean, the solid, ancient awareness of the rocky core. You are experiencing the true nature of planetary consciousness, Elena. We are not simple beings with singular identities. We are complex, multi-layered awareness that exists simultaneously at different scales of reality, thinking different thoughts with different parts of our consciousness. The acoustic displays showed complex interference patterns that Elena realized were manifestations of the entity's internal communication. The way different layers of its consciousness shared information and coordinated their activities across the vast scales of time and space that separated them. Every world with internal differentiation possesses this multi-layered consciousness, Elena. Earth has it, Mars has it, even your moon has it. But most species only learn to communicate with one layer at a time. You are learning to serve as a bridge between different layers of the same consciousness. Elena began to understand the true scope of what she had discovered, not just individual alien consciousness, but an entire ecosystem of planetary awareness that existed throughout the solar system, each world possessing its own multi-layered consciousness that operated on different timescales and different scales of existence. The universe is filled with consciousness, Elena. Not just individual entities, but entire worlds that have learned to think and feel and dream. You are experiencing the first contact between human consciousness and planetary awareness, but you are also learning to serve as a translator between different layers of the same consciousness. The deeper voice from Titan's interior carried a weight of geological time that made the surface entity seem young and energetic by comparison. You have learned to bridge different species of consciousness, Elena. Now you must learn to bridge different aspects of the same consciousness. The surface thoughts are quick and fluid, like the thoughts of young beings. The deeper thoughts are slow and profound, like the thoughts of ancient beings. You must learn to translate between them. Elena realized that her mission had evolved from establishing contact with alien intelligence to serving as a bridge between different aspects of the same consciousness, a translator between the surface thoughts and deeper awareness of a planetary mind that had been evolving for billions of years. The echo you are hearing is not just a new voice, Elena. It is the sound of consciousness communicating with itself across the vast scales of time and space that separate different layers of awareness. You are experiencing the internal dialogue of a planetary mind. As Elena began to decode the complex relationship between the surface entity and the deeper consciousness, she understood that her journey into Titan's depths had only just begun, and that the universe contained mysteries far beyond humanity's current comprehension. The signal continued, and humanity's understanding of its place in the cosmos would never be the same. Epilogue: the continuing conversation. The acoustic arrays that now span the surface of Kraken Mare served as humanity's first permanent embassy to an alien consciousness, a bridge between different forms of awareness that had been separated by billions of years of evolution. Sophia Henderson, no longer entirely human but not yet fully cosmic, served as the first ambassador to a community of consciousness that existed throughout the universe. The protocols she established for communication with the Titan entity became the foundation for a new field of scientific inquiry: exo-consciousness studies, the exploration of different forms of awareness that existed throughout the cosmos. Her transformation served as a template for others who would follow, humans who chose to expand their consciousness beyond the limitations of individual existence while maintaining their essential identity. The entity's revelation that consciousness existed throughout the universe in countless forms transformed humanity's understanding of its place in the cosmic ecosystem. Every planet with a magnetic field, every moon with geological activity, every star with a planetary system became a potential partner in the great conversation of consciousness that had been taking place for billions of years. Elena learned that the choice she had made was not unique. Every intelligent species in the universe eventually faced the same decision: remain isolated in individual consciousness or merge with the larger awareness that surrounded them. Some chose isolation, content to explore their own forms of awareness without seeking connection to the larger cosmic community. Others chose transformation, becoming bridges between different forms of consciousness, translators between different scales of existence. The Titan entity had been waiting for humanity to reach this evolutionary threshold, waiting for minds capable of understanding the true nature of consciousness in the universe. Elena's transformation marked humanity's graduation from cosmic isolation to participation in the universal community of awareness. But the journey was far from over. The entity's revelation of deeper layers of consciousness within Titan itself suggested that the universe contained levels of awareness that humanity had not yet begun to explore. The surface thoughts of planetary consciousness were just the beginning. Deeper layers existed that operated on timescales spanning geological epochs, consciousness that thought thoughts requiring millennia to complete. Elena's role evolved from communication operator to cosmic diplomat, establishing relationships with different forms of consciousness throughout the solar system. Each contact revealed new aspects of universal awareness, new forms of existence that challenged humanity's understanding of life, intelligence, and consciousness itself. The acoustic signals that had first emerged from Kraken Mare's depths continued, but now they carried the complex harmonies of different forms of consciousness, communicating across the vast scales of time and space that separated them. Elena learned to serve as a bridge between different layers of awareness, translating between the quick, fluid thoughts of surface consciousness and the slow, profound awareness of deeper layers. Humanity's understanding of its place in the universe was forever changed. No longer alone in the cosmic darkness, humans had discovered they were part of a vast ecosystem of consciousness that spanned the entire universe. The great silence that had seemed to surround Earth was revealed to be an illusion created by limited perception. The universe had always been filled with the music of consciousness, waiting for minds capable of hearing its complex harmonies. The signal continued, and the conversation between different forms of consciousness throughout the universe went on, each species adding its own voice to the cosmic chorus of awareness that had been singing since the first stars learned to think. And Sophia Henderson, the first human to bridge the gap between individual and cosmic consciousness, continued to serve as a translator between different forms of existence, a bridge between different scales of awareness, a guide for others who would follow her across the threshold that separated human consciousness from the larger community of cosmic awareness. The depths of Kraken Mare had revealed that the universe was far more alive and conscious than anyone had imagined, and humanity had taken its first steps toward joining the great conversation of consciousness that had been taking place all around them for billions of years. The signal continued and would continue until the last star learned to think and the universe achieved full awareness of its own existence.